Hi all, there is some fascination in the Rybka versus Houdini match, which is good because I'm fascinated as well to see how they're playing, how this mysterious engine Houdini is playing, and it's leading some of the computer rating lists in the world. In some others it's been excluded, I think, because of the controversies that are around cloning. But anyway, let's look at game 4. So Houdini playing white played d4. So we have a positional game, and who would have thought, a quite positional choice. But I guess the opening book was chosen by humans, or put in by humans. So they're just following a few book moves to start off with. So we have a seemingly ultra solid system from black, Fianchetto combined with this c6 and d5. So black stakes the claim to the e4 square. Knight bd2, and now there's no issue, of course, with the queen's bishop either, because bishop f5, and there's some restraint really on the light squares, and it's annoying for white to try and do anything active here. A minority attack is ruled out, for example, because the rook b1's unavailable. So white has to tread carefully here. This is the sort of position I would dread playing someone high rated on the ICC, because there's no real points of attack here. There is one square to kind of highlight though in black's position, e5. It might be a little more vulnerable than usual because the pawn here rather than back home or on d6. So e5 is the focal point for white to be positive here, and b3 kind of reflects that the bishop can fianchetto and then mark that e5 square. So knight e4, bishop b2. Okay, black plays knight d7. Black's got pressure on e5 as well from a couple of pieces. Now knight h4, encouraging exchange of knights. And it looks as though, has white achieved anything from the opening? It's not a sort of hack attack opening. It's a kind of dry, bit boring position, one might assume. After this next move, bishop e6, white opens up some files here with e4. So a change in pawn structure. Let's have a quick evaluation of what's going on. I think if d takes, then the bishop's probably getting trapped with d5. I'm just going to check that assumption. I think d5 traps the bishop here. Oh no, there's bishop takes b2, but still white would be better actually with d5. That's the right move here. So bishop takes b2, queen takes, c takes, e takes, bishop can't go really there without knight f5, so bishop g4, b takes, and white will stand a little bit better here according to my version of Rybka on this rubbish machine. So so black actually took on e4, which seems the more solid choice. Bishop takes e4, bishop h3. So again, we could say, what really has white got? Black seems to be ultra solid here. But white's got a little bit of a bind on e5 and the e file now, and black's potentially got a semi-open pressure on d4. So both engines have their semi-open files to play on here. So rook fe1, rook e8. So what does this mean? It means maybe e5 is on the cards. It's a mysterious rook move. What else? I can't see what else apart from maybe trying to play for e5. But in fact, engines, they don't care about the history of the game or what they previously played. They'll play the requirements of the position. And here, e5 is locked down anyway with knight f3. So there's a real lockdown on e5. And black forgets about, just because he's played the rook to e8, doesn't care, just plays knight f6 for the moment. Bishop d3. And now queen c7. So white enjoys a kind of bind on the e5 square. It might not be all of our cups of tea here, this position, but there's a small advantage, I believe, for white here. So bishop f1. Now this is an interesting move because some of us would be a bit frightened maybe with the light square weaknesses, but in this kind of position, with the black bishop pointing this direction with the fianchetto, and with this bind on e5, it's very difficult to imagine these light square weaknesses are a major issue. So maybe this is correct judgment that this simplification might actually favour white here. So bishop takes f1, king takes f1. There's nothing really to exploit these weaknesses. It's not like the previous game where a bishop even docked on h1 and there were major light square issues which actually won a piece. Here it's a much quieter position, a strong bind on e5, both files having the semi-open files to play on. Okay, so a5, queen e2 accentuating control of the e file and the e5 square. e6, okay, a seemingly passive move, but maybe d5 would be soon on the cards or something like that, and so e6 might be trying to discourage in some variations d5. So e6. I mean, let's actually just check that with a token move. Say we did put rook d8, would that really wreck the position? Probably not. Okay, it's a bit of a quiet position. I hope visually that I'm getting this right, that it's a quiet position. It looks fairly quiet, so there should be some emphasis here on the slower elements of the position without being tactically blown to pieces by something unexpected. So anyway, a4 extending the scope of the rook on a8, b4 keeping the a file closed, knight g4. Okay, knight g4. Maybe trying to provoke another weakness like h3. It might just retreat back with job done. But Houdini actually just plays bishop c1. And now, okay, the knight went back to h6. I wonder if let's have a look at knight f6. Would that be terrible here? Bishop f4. White's got a bind on e5 clearly. But it's okay. It's pleasant for white, but there's no. I don't think there's anything too significant about it. So knight h6, bishop f4, and now we see the queen attacks again, and now an imbalance is created. So a different piece configuration for both sides with bishop takes h6. So bishop takes h6 gives white a little bit of time to increase space now with c5. And maybe exert more binding pressure on e5 potentially. So rook ad1, and now we have knight e5. But is this dead equal? Because that bishop could be very useful in some situations. It's complementing the pawn structure, all these pawns on the light squares, and it's a dark squared bishop. So it's not bad for the pawn structure, but this knight looks comfortable on e5, and any attempt to eject the knight would weaken the e file and e6. So black has to be careful. Rook a4. So we see now bishop g7. We see knight c4 as if the knight's poking in is threatening a fork. Knight b6, forking queen and rook. So the rook parries that in advance. Rook b3, as though the pawn is now attacked by two pieces. So something has to be done there. But meanwhile, this d pawn is now picked on. It's actually cheekily taken, even though the bishop would be pinned to the queen. So bishop takes d4. So all of a sudden we have some excitement now in the position. Was actually Rybka being completely over optimistic with this a pawn movement? If we just rewind back before carrying on here for a sec, because this looks as though it's the beginning of some sort of end now. With this a pawn being a problem here. When did it start to become a problem? Would it have become a problem here after bishop f6, because there's an implied knight maneuver after c5 to give the c4 square, which would mean, I don't know, that if the knight's coming in there, this a pawn starts to be vulnerable. Is it all to do with the a pawn bishop h6? Because we saw this this knight maneuver, which gives that knight magical independence properties, and the knight can now pick on the a pawn there. It's definitely on a3. So white's next moves here were picking on the a pawn, because rook b1 wasn't just defending, it's now like attacking a3. So bishop d4 being prompted is the beginning of the end, it seems, for this game, believe it or not. I don't really know. Within calculations, could it have all started with bishop takes h6, knowing that the knight was going to be quite powerful later on c4? So here, anyway, how is this pin exploited? Well, there's rook e3 for starters, and now there's a threat of rook e4 or rook e5. Let's check the major threat, if I give a token move just to test the major threat, if I give a null move, if I can try and find what I call a null move without distorting the position too much, that probably distorts the position a lot. But here, okay, rook d2 will be strong just for the idea of queen d1 here, apparently, maybe. Queen, rook d2, say the king moved back, rook e4, well that's trouble anyway, just rook e4. So, okay, I think there's a threat rook e4. It looks to me rook e4 is a threat unless there's like a bishop f2, but it seems unlikely here. So b5 was played. Now knight e5, and again, you know, there's a threat of rook e4 basically now. That's more simple because the knight on e5 stops any other possibilities really for white. So rook e4 is the main possibility to try and munch that bishop. So how does Rybka wrangle out this? Well, rook a4, and now we see queen e1, just holding on to the b pawn for the moment, but offering up a2 now. So one pawn sacrifice has led to another. But no, c6, it's only very, very temporary, because c6 now, knight takes c6. And white actually cheekily he's won the piece now. But this a pawn looks a bit dangerous, and a lot of us might be scared. You know, the a pawn, is that really, you know, has Rybka calculated this properly? Well, knight takes d8. Now we see the a pawn comes to a2, and this knight, you know, is it really meaningful if this a pawn's really dangerous? Well, there's a very precise clinical move that you can expect from all engines. Queen e5 to stop the queening, and now rook a1. If there's a check here, there's just king g2, the rook be protected. Rook takes b4, renewing the idea, you know, maybe queen b1 is possible at some point. But now queen c4, possible idea that queen e4 might be handy. In fact, here queen e4 is played, so white's a knight up doesn't look too good, but on the other hand, this a pawn's still kind of scary. So rook a1, rook e2. But now, okay, faced with these two connected passed pawns, which occurred in the famous game of Rubinstein, I haven't shown you yet, against Capablanca. There was possibilities for two connected passed pawns. But here, how is it handled tactically by white? Well, the c pawn's used to distract the rook. So c6, now c7. So the rook can't take without rook a2. And now deflection, rook a2. So the a pawn, which was really dangerous, has gone. Okay, well, Houdini plays sharp moves, of course, rook a8. So the knight's now protected and threatening to discover attack on the king. King moves, rook b8. And after king d6, the knight stumbles back, b7 and a5. It's reached the blockading point of the b pawn, and now it comes centrally. Now f4 makes way also for the king now to come to f3 without blocking the own f pawn, keeping a hold of e5 from black. So the knight still positions nicely centrally with that bind on e5 again re-established. So knight f3 now. So is there time for black's b pawn? Well, the king's coming in now to the rescue, and the knight's now starting to help even more on d2. These pawns are locked down, and it's really looking clearer now that white is just the knight up for not much compensation. This is a cheeky little move, king c1, because if rook takes d2, rook c6, and then rook d6 if king d3. So the knight is immune here. Rook d6 now protecting the knight, and again the b pawn's no problem for an engine. Engines are brilliant compared to humans at managing the dangers of passed pawns. If there's only one move that they have of like 30 moves in a row, they'll play that only move. They'll go on that thin ice that we would call thin ice. It's not really thin ice for engines. It's easy peasy. It's just number crunching. As long as the electricity stays on, they're fine. So king d1, king b4. Okay, check. So white's clearly just a knight up. Is there any drawing chances in this endgame? well, another curious question here actually is, I assume both sides are also equipped with table bases if it reached a very simplified material situation, because that would be like perfect play from table base. But here, sorry, just rewinding back here, this check to support the pawn means that it's not really technically difficult now after rook h4. Black's being driven into a sort of zugzwang. If he moves the rook, then h7. If he moves the king, then king f3, getting that key square. So end of game here. So I don't know, that was a bit of a quiet, dull opening in comparison with the other games, but I thought chronologically I should cover this if I'm going to have a look at more games in this match. I have a fascination at the moment by the play of the engines in this match, and it's interesting. Was this optimism somehow, this a-pawn push? Is it slightly vulnerable? Why did it have to go to a3? That's one major question here. Could it have just been left on a4? Was this bishop h6 already with some consideration that even on a4 that pawn is maybe a problem? If the knight's coming to c4 and then to b6, maybe that's the issue, that the knight's going to encourage a3 from black. So without a3, actually, let's just ask this particular question really. Did black have to play a3 because it seemed a bit vulnerable there? Well, other moves are given as virtually the same kind of weighting here. So say bishop g7, okay, knight e5. a3's again been prompted, but let's try and avoid playing it. Let's just play another move. Queen c2, and now a3 again prompted. Let's just play another move. Is there going to be a real problem with the a pawn, or is there something else I'm not seeing here? So rook d2 again, a3's being prompted. Let's keep the pawn on a4. Now knight c4. Now this is my theory being tested. Is there a problem with the a pawn now because of knight b6? So say rook a6. White can always play a3 as well here now, but that's kind of committal. So say this tactical move, or rook e4, rook e5. Why a3 here? Cannot anything else be played? Say bishop h8. So say white plays a3. Maybe that's the point, that if white plays a3, the bishop's on a dark square, the pawn's on a light square. So we have here a basic liability to the knight, which has access to both colours all the time. But can it actually round up the a pawn by force? So that's just one more question here to answer, which would really make the concept of bishop takes h6 quite a genius idea. So say knight b6, putting pressure on a4. So I'm just trying to see if there is a scenario here. It does seem to be this basic ganging up, now neutralising any counterplay in advance, prophylaxis before munching. It's not taking. It's really quite kind of immune though, because there's always going to be rook a8 on this a3 pawn. So maybe, you know, again, it's not so clear it's even an exploitable weakness. I guess it just represents a long-term liability. If it cannot be defended by the pawn, then it's away from its fellow pawns. Okay, so that's just one curious aspect of this game, tied up with bishop h6, with the knight being able to access both colours, fixing black's queenside pawns. Okay, but as it turned out, you know, here, you know, it was much more easily ganged up on when it was on a3. In any case, but d4 dropping created this pin scenario where black seemed just to sack a piece, thinking maybe the a pawn gave compensation. But I mean, even here, my Rybka was evaluating as equal here, with these very long lines, variations, very long variations. I mean, I wonder if I can clip this analysis and just show you a notepad. Okay, no, I mean, it's just long strings of variations here with 0. So something magical has happened here, and I'll show you where the evaluation switch occurs, because this move is not factored in rook d1, a mysterious rook centralizing move, but it seems to have something magical about it, giving the rook independence, that central magic. So what happened here for white to get an advantage all of a sudden now after rook d1? Because Rybka really wasn't factoring this in. I know that because the evaluation went down very suddenly after this choice, which overrode its own preferences. So there's something magical about this move. If it's encouraging the exchange of queens and the rook's simply going back. So interesting, really. And if the exchange of queens didn't occur, I guess there might be some sort of attack on the king. Let's avoid playing queen e4 and play h5 is not a good move. I just want to see knight takes f7. Definitely, you know, there's implications of the rook coming in for a kill here, using that central file. Maybe the queen's doing a lot of work here by itself. Whoops. Off the check. Queen f8. The queen can do most of the work. Yes, it's getting a bit tedious. This line. Okay, where the queen could be picked up and the a pawn stopped. So there's something mysterious about rook d1 anyway going on here, which means white has some opportunity. Okay, so h5 there was knight f7, and if h6, then knight b7. Okay, maybe it's not as mysterious as I thought, because there's a clear threat now, as well as guarding the a pawn still. There's a clear threat of rook d8 after this knight moves to b7, which means, I don't know, so the position's been overestimated then. This knight down position seems to have been overestimated by Rybka. So maybe it wouldn't have taken on d4 given this is the case. This is still just speculation, but it's clearly a piece down here. And there was a major bit of consolidation on Houdini's part to make sure that black pawns weren't going anywhere. First the a pawn was eliminated, then the knight was kind of re-centralised, the king got in on the party, and then it was a basic mopping up job, a knight up. So another fascinating game. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.